Welcome to Cross Border Interviews, the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And for today's episode, we are sitting down and chatting with District of Mackenzie Councillor Jesse Wright. Mackenzie is a friendly community of about 3,700 residents and was built in the 1960s during the construction of the W.A.C. Bennet Dam. The dam flooded the region, creating the Williston Lake Reservoir, besides which the community was built. And in 1965, the clearing of land began for the main town site. British Columbia Forest Products built a pulp mill and 2 sawmills to begin development of the vast forest resources in the area. The first family settled in Mackenzie in June of 1966, and the community was developed as an instant town and was planned and designed as a walkable, compact community. Mackenzie enjoys some of the best municipal water in British Columbia, a very low crime rate, low taxes, low real estate prices, and high-paying jobs in growing natural resource industries in the area. This makes Mackenzie a great place to visit, a great place to start a life, buy a home, raise a family, or just enjoy being able to afford to travel and do what you like. Jesse, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about the amazing, beautiful district of Mackenzie in northern British Columbia. Got to start with a very simple question to kick off this interview. Where's your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Jesse?
Oh man, it's well. First off, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Christopher, and I think you do great work for municipal issues in the country. Why I've always been interested in politics since a young age, and I don't really know where it's come from. You probably have to ask my parents for a more fulsome answer for this one. I have a My first like political memory was I remember a grade six like community betterment project where we had to like pick something to make the community better. And for some reason, I thought the way of doing that was like getting involved in electoral politics. Like you want to make a difference with the people who actually make decisions. So I've always had that gut instinct that like if you want to make the world a better place, the way to do that is the people who make the decisions, and that's elected officials, whether it be municipal, federal, provincial. Um, and I've always had that just love. I went to university because I love politics. Like I always said, my first degree was political studies, and I did that because I loved politics and didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And then when I went to teachers college, it was always with the eye for like, well, I'll get 10 to 20 years of experience, so then I'd be a worthy politician. And chips fell where they may, and I'm here much earlier than I anticipated. But that's probably a longer answer to a simpler question than you meant.
I love long answers, but the question that I have to follow up is, how does a boy from Bethany, Ontario, come to be a counselor in the district of Mackenzie, British Columbia? Circle that square for me if you can, Jesse.
Yeah. In hindsight, it all makes sense, but probably it does need to be explained. I'm from Ontario. I grew up in small towns all around Peterborough. Like you said, you mentioned Bethany. I moved to northern BC, initially Prince George and then Mackenzie, because they asked. I was in teachers college, to be a teacher, and I knew I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time on like a supply list, which th those of your listeners in Ontario will know that's a big thing in Ontario. You can supply for sometimes decades before you actually get a job. So I was looking for somewhere where I could get out of teachers college and get directly into a classroom. And I heard BC was, especially northern BC, was the case. And I was a big downhill skier. I still am a big downhill skier. So kind of I was looking to teach somewhere where I could do some downhill skiing. So I created a profile on the teacher hiring website, and within a week I had a call from the School District 57 for which is the Mackenzie Prince George area saying, "Would you consider us?" And basically they called, and they were the first ones to ask, and I got a job right away, and I had no need to look elsewhere. So then the reason I chose Mackenzie, 'cause it's a very large school district, is because of Powder King. Powder King, for those of your listeners who are skiers or snowboarders, Powder King's the best, well, best is subjective, but the biggest ski hill in northern BC. So I just wanted to teach somewhere close to the best ski hills. That's how I ended up in Mackenzie.
So you're like me a little bit because I don't know where mine came from. All I remember from my growing up was the 1990 Ontario election, when Bob Ray swept to power. The only reason I know that is because my aunt was running in Scugog, Lindsay area. So she was the candidate. So the Scugog, Clarington, which was my hometown, she was the Liberal candidate, and Bob Ray won that election. So that was my first introduction into party, like actual politics. But what was the draw for you municipally? Because you born and raised in the Peterborough area, now living out in District of Mackenzie. What drew you ultimately to say, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to run municipally first? Because your background leads me to believe you could potentially have gone provincially as well.
Federally, and I've always kind of thought about those were like my first passions was definitely federal and provincial, just because it's what gets the most news attention, right? And you read about it the most. And but I came to realize quite quickly the party system, I just couldn't fit into it. I have a hard time other people telling me what to do and what to think, and even like I have to have a leader I like 100% agreed with. And I always imagine, I don't know how much you follow federal politics these days, but if I was involved, I'd be the Nate Erskine Smith of what was happening. So I'd have to speak out, and I'd get in trouble with my own party. And so municipal politics allows me to speak for my own. Like I can represent the constituents how I believe best, and I don't have to worry what anybody else thinks to a certain degree. I can just do what I think's right without the party process. I just don't think I could do it.
Is that hard? Is that hard to sort of be your own man, particularly when at the municipal level you have to represent the people who voted for you
Yeah.
and technically those who don't vote for you. So you have to listen to the people and technically, and I've heard this time and time again, so I'm just rephrasing it a little bit. The voters are your bosses. The residents are your bosses. So can you take direction from the residents?
Oh, I think it's the fundamental part of my job. I actually have a little sticky note on my council where I sit at council with the number of people who voted for me. So I'm reminded that throughout the whole council thing of those 526 people are the reason that I'm in this chair. And you're right, it's not just those 526, it's the entire community I represent, but it was those 526 that made the decision to tick my name and put me in that seat. So I always try to remind myself, yes, it's hard. Um, like there's definitely hard days. I've had days where like I've come home emotional, crying. Like it's a hard job. Don't but I think municipal politics and getting to be your own person lets you go to sleep at night knowing you did the right thing and you weren't doing it for partisan, crass political reasons, right? That's the beauty of municipal politics, is I don't have to worry about leadership things or trying to like get the worst negative ad of my opponents and that kind of stuff, right? You get to do it even if you're doing something hard, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say you're doing it for the right reasons in the right way, which I don't think sometimes you have to cross those lines in provincial and federal.
What is the right way in your sense? In a counselor's position of Jesse Wright, how do you know you're doing the right thing for your community?
Ooh, I don't always know. So I'll say
Oh,
that
so
humbleness, like
an honest politician. This is very weird for this show.
no, and maybe I never claim to be a good politician. So we'll see. The electorate will always say I've only done one election, so they can kick me out the next time. Um, but I think being humble and knowing that I don't have the right answer for everything, right? I think that being is authentic and curious and wanting to hear different sides of an argument and that kind of stuff is the key to that kind of stuff. It's the I try to pride myself in following like the Socratic and Socrates like definition of knowledge and that kind of stuff, where he said he was the smartest person in the world because he knew nothing. So trying to have that open mind and being willing to change your mind. And I have a sign I got made for myself that's right off the screen here that says unlearn something daily, with the idea of like being able to change your mind and not be rigid in what you're thinking. But then you got to balance that with being principled, right? And having things that you stand for that are non-negotiables and fighting for those things. And
Well, that
it's
brings up
really
a good it
go
brings up
for
a
it.
good question. I apologize to interrupt because that was going to be the follow-up question. We all have our own moral compass that we believe in. We all have our that moral clarity that we say this is right, this is wrong. But as a community of 37, if
It
the
ebbs and
last
flows with industry. Yeah.
so let's say 3,700 people, there's 3,700 people in Mackenzie who would probably have very own personal morals that they believe in. So at the end of the day, you're the one who's been elected to put your hand up and say yay or nay to any motion or direction. Do you listen to the people before you make that ultimate decision? Or when you do make that decision, do you try and sell it to people? Because you have to ensure that you're getting the feedback you need, because I'm assuming you want to get reelected in a few years' time.
Well, I'll start with where you ended because that's something that we always kind of talk about is the wanting to get reelected. And I do. Like I am going to run again and I want to win. But I never, at least consciously, let it dictate what I'm doing at a given motion, at a given thing. Like I don't want to, and it goes back to something I mentioned to you earlier in our conversation of being able to go to sleep at night and look at yourself in the mirror. Like I don't want to, I tell people I'm doing my dream job doing this, and I really am like being an elected official is my dream job. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I could lose the next election for a whole variety of reasons. And I don't want to look back 20 years from now and regret anything I did. I want to make sure I did it the way I wanted to do it.
But are you
Um,
willing to admit you're wrong? Because
oh, absolutely.
in council decisions, it's very binary, right? It's very yes or no. There's no middle ground in the decisions that you have to make. But there's always decisions that you make and then you get new information afterwards. You go, oh, I didn't know this. So now do I have to go back and see if we can bring it back to council to make a better decision? Or do I just have to let it stand and just live with the consequences of my vote?
Yeah, and I'll give you a concrete example of this. In Mackenzie, the district of Mackenzie, we had a very contentious issue of we have a rural subdivision north of town called Ganahas,
Yep.
which is it's about 5 minutes north of town if you drive just north, but it's within our board our boundaries. And we had to do something with their drinking water. We had to add some chlorine to it, and we had to get a new municipal drinking. We had to invest in a new treatment center. Um, and the people were very upset about that. So we as a council probably acted in a way that the people who were that actually let their voices be told didn't want us to do by going ahead with this water treatment center. But we did it because the health authority said it was for health and safety and that this is the healthy level that you need for your drinking water to be to keep your constituents safe. So at the end of the day, I had to go against the constituents in our vote and vote for this drinking water because I thought their health and safety was more important than their concerns, right? So some like we make decisions all the time that sometimes the public's not supportive, but you do it for their best interest, right? Um, and I know it sounds like, yeah, it's
Can
really
I just
complicated. It's
uh,
complicated.
on the Mackenzie website, because I do a little bit of a pre introduction of the community before we jump into the interview. On the Mackenzie website, and it says Mackenzie has the cleanest drinking water of all of BC.
And we do.
So thank you, counselor, for the cleanest drinking water of all of BC.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on our drinking water. We really do. It comes directly from Morphy Lake, which is a beautiful right beside the town. It's untreated currently, and it's yeah, we had to do something. I was interviewed a couple of years ago from a newspaper, like a news magazine called Living Here. They're based down south in British Columbia, and the lady asked like, "What's something that like Mackenzians pride themselves for, like a symbol of Mackenzie?" So I asked people. Right, I think I just did like a Facebook post. I'm like, can you? Like, I'm kind of new here. Can you guys give me like what a symbol is? And the answer I got was our clean drinking water and the pride people take in the drinking water. So that's what I gave the lady. It's in the article. It's on my Facebook page. You can go read it.
I will be doing that right after this interview. But you bring up a good sort of not segue, but a good question I want to ask because your engagement with residents is a key pillar of what a counselor has to the job is, right? You engage with people to hear what their feedback is, to hear what's going on, so that way you can make the best decision for the community. Very point blank question, but do you think the community is engaged with what's going on at City Hall, or do you get a sense that there's an apathetic nature when it comes to municipal politics, like yourself, even at the beginning of your sort of your school years? Do you ever get a sense that as long as my water's clean when I turn on the tap and the garbage is picked up when I need it to be picked up, I really don't have time to deal with what the cities or the community is going through. That's why we've elected you. Or do you get a sense that people are actually wanting to engage you on the issues that are going on in the community?
N- no, I'm trying to remember the way you phrased the first question. I don't think people are engaged.
No,
Like
the
people,
first, the basically the question: are people engaged? Are people
no.
engaged enough that you would be able to walk down the Main Street and say, "Hey, John, do you know what's going on at City Hall right now?" And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's X, Y, and Z." Or are people tuned out because It's a lot to do as a municipal councillor. You're paid part-time hours, but you work full-time hours in some sense, right?
Yeah, and you're hitting on, and I truly do believe this is one of the biggest issues of our times. Like I really, that's like I wasn't just tooting your own smoke there at the beginning of our interview, Chris. Like I think the work you're doing, like to draw attention to municipal issues, is huge because there isn't enough attention to people what's going on in town halls, not just in Mackenzie. Like I hear it across the country when we go to these events like UBCM or FCM, right? But no, if I go down the street tomorrow morning at lunchtime and talk to people having coffee and say, "What do you think of what's on the?" Because we have council tomorrow night. Like I'll say, like, "What do you think? What's on the agenda?" I, I would like less than 5% of the towns probably read the agenda. Like we have like our every council meeting is open, right? And so we have seats there for people. Regularly, we have nobody in the audience looking back at us, like zero. And usually
It,
the only time when we have people actually coming, it's because there's a contentious issue that's blown up and they're there to yell at us, right? Where they if they did came earlier and plugged in, they would have been more part of the process, right? So
so
like
are people reacting to issues rather than being proactive on issues?
100%,
And it's
100%.
not, and for those who are listening in the District of Mackenzie, I should note that this is not just a District of Mackenzie thing. It is something that I'm hearing in the 859 episodes that I've done on municipal issues on this show. It is a reoccurring theme. People are just not engaged, and we're more reactive to issues municipally rather than proactive, and that needs to change. And I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. Hopefully, this show does it. Hopefully, people start being engaged in their community because I'm sick and tired of people being upset with things after the fact rather than before the fact.
And it's not just the municipal issue, and you're 100% right. And again, I'll say it again, you're doing amazing work, and that's why I always support what you guys are doing. It's amazing. But it's not just municipal. Like there's a communication crisis. We talk about it in Mackenzie's. I won't pretend to speak beyond Mackenzie, but the most common phrase you'll hear from people in Mackenzie is that, "Oh, we didn't know that was happening." And you can hear it for every, and it's not just municipal things. It's nonprofits. It's our rec center. It's our schools where it's like parents will say, "Oh, I didn't know there was this event yesterday," right? And there's a problem of getting information to people. I think social media has a lot to do with that, where people expect information to be put right in front of them these days, and but it's also a bifurcated information system where like people don't know where to go for all their information because there's so many different sources, and then who do you trust, right? Like there's so many ways why this is an issue, but it's something like we deal with it every day, trying to get information. Like we do a survey of a something the district's considering, a council has to make a decision on, and we'll get 50 responses, right? And we pushed it on our social media, and we've sent out leaflets in the mail, and how do we reach people? And if you have a solution to that, I'd love to hear it because we think about it every day. But
No, and as someone who worked in the communications and marketing for a municipality, I've said this numerous times over and over again. The municipality can only go so far. You can put it on every radio station, you can put it on TV, you can put it on social media, you can put it on a website, you can literally send out flyers and utility bills, you can do X, Y, and Z. The resident has to take some responsibility in the idea that they have to get the information. The municipality can only go 98% of the way. The resident has to go at least 2%. Okay. And that's only 2%. That's only, okay, what's going on in my community? I'm tuned in and I still have a hard time trying to find information that's going on in the world that in my own municipality. And I'm from a large city of Calgary. And there's days that I go, what's going on? Because the information is just not readily available anymore. And if you do have to try and track it down, it's like jumping through hoops. So there is no easy answer to this. And it's a universal Canadian issue that we want things right in front of us. Unless you're going to go knock on 3,700 houses to get people to fill out the survey literally in their
yeah,
face, it's just not going to happen. And I guarantee you, there's people listening to this right now who would say, "You got 50 responses? That's a lot."
maybe, yeah, for sure. Absolutely, absolutely.
But we you, and I say you because the royal you now for a second, you're one member on your council and you have to get outside your silo. So you talk about the 500 people, 526 people who voted for you in your election. That's great. But you have to listen to the people who didn't vote for you. You have to listen to the councilors who may vehemently disagree with you on every issue, but they have the right to talk. I'm not saying anyone in particular. I don't know your dynamics at your council. I'm just saying that's the reality that we live in. How do you ensure that you engage with both sides of every issue to ensure that you're getting both sides? So that way people can't accuse you of, oh, that's Jesse. He's only talking to his silo social media friends and he only wants to hear the yes answers rather than the hard answers that I'm going to hear. How do you ensure that you hear both sides of the story if their people aren't engaged? Do you
That's
actually
such a
have to
good
go
question.
door
Yeah.
knock?
Well, that's part of it. Like if I wasn't like you mentioned before, this is a part-time job. If I could do this in a utopia and I didn't have to worry about paying my bills, I would every issue go door to door, right? That's the perfect way. But you can't do that. But I think the way I try to do it, and I can't say I'm perfect at it, is try to be accessible and meet people where they're at, which is why I try to be so active on social media as possible so people know what I'm thinking, and then they can let me know if they disagree or agree with me or not. I don't know if it's a smart or bad idea, but I actively reach out to people who disagree with me. Like I'll send a private message saying, "Can we grab a coffee to talk about this?" Or if there's a contentious issue coming to the council table, I proactively reach out to the groups to try to have a meeting with them to hear their side. So it's that
So
being available and proactively reaching out. But I'm not saying I do it well. I probably don't.
can I flip the original question a
Sure.
little bit and say, when we talk about the apathy that's going on at municipal level, you mentioned FCM a few minutes ago on the show. Now, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities probably should get a dime every time I talk about them on the show because I talk about them so much. And the gentleman I talk about more often than not is past President Scott Pierce, because he said the best quote that I've ever heard when it comes to municipal politics. You are the government of proximity. You are the where the rubber hits the road, literally and figuratively where the rubber hits the road. And that means you get the brunt of all the concerns and issues that people raise. Healthcare's going wrong, you hear about it. Garbage isn't picked up, you hear about it. Things that are going on federally, you're going to hear about it. Now, they're coming to you because they know you probably better than their MLA or their MP because they probably see you more often than them. Do you get a sense that people understand the jurisdictional purview of each level of government and they will go to their MLA or they go to their MP rather than go to you because they'd rather get the answer quickly rather than go through four different people? Or because you are the government of proximity, people will come talk to you about the issues because you're there to represent them. And that means if they have an issue with education, you now have an issue with education.
Yes, the answer to your question is yes. I think people come to us for issues regardless of their which actual level of government they should be dealing with. And I have kind of a unique perspective on that because I used to be when I first got elected, I was the constituency assistant for our local MLA. So people would come to me and they would ask a question that I knew was actually for me as a councillor and not for the MLA. So I was able to answer it, or vice versa. So yeah, people come to us all the time, and we do things as a council outside of what our basis of authority is all the time too. Like our last council meeting, we decided to write a letter to, or no, the province is doing consultations on cannabis regulation and health authorities. Neither of those things are really within the municipal mandate, but we decided to write a letter and contribute to those things, right? And we write letters to the school district all the time to try to collaborate with them and write letters to nurses unions to try to recruit professionals here, right? None of this is in the community charter that the municipality should be doing, right? But our citizens expect us to be doing it, right? Because you're 100% right. We're the politicians of proximity and they want to see us doing their jobs. I would argue, like, I think there is, like, I assume intelligence in the electorate. I really do. So I think more people than we think know the levels of power. I think people sometimes assume when we're elected that we end up getting more power than we actually do, which is actually the issue. It's like if you're on council, you have a direct line to the minister or something like that, right? Which we don't have at all.
But
Go ahead.
but I'm gonna challenge you on that. I heard it from a mayor out in Nova Scotia. I think it was the mayor of White Wolfville. He said this. Again, if I apologize, Lenny White, if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm 90% sure. I'm 99.9% sure it was Lenny. He said, the resident will come to me, the mayor, because when I send a letter to or an email to the minister or to my local MLA, I'm probably going to hear back quicker than if it was just the average resident Joe on the street. Because
True.
when you sign your emails to the minister, you're signing Councillor so and so, Mayor so and so, Director so and so. So they'll go, oh, it's another politician, so let's get back quicker. If it's just John Smith from 123 Main Street, they're going to go, oh, who is this? I can wait a few days to get back. So there is a little bit of power that you do hold in
Oh, yeah.
that role.
And we get opportunities, right? Like we have UBCM coming up in a couple weeks, and we get access to ministers during that week, right? So like we do, you're 100% right, is we do. And part of it is that the citizens, we talked about it before, about the people who elect us, expect us to do this work, even if it's not in the community charter, right? They expect us to lobby the province and the feds, and sometimes it goes beyond that, and you lobby private corporations and stuff like that, right? Like they expect us to lobby on their behalf. So it is what the electorate expects from us. So even if it's not technically, I'll always remember, to use like a very vivid example in our federal history, of when Justin Trudeau said that housing wasn't a federal responsibility, right? And he got slammed for that, right? So it's the same thing. Even if he's technically right, he's still, like, the electorate was not accept. It's not acceptable to the electorate to say that, right? So even if education's not a District of Mackenzie responsibility, when people are upset about education, we need to do something about it.
I want to turn to the district as a whole now. And before I ask these questions, I'm going to just do a little preamble. So just bear with me for a few minutes there, Jesse. This is a conversation between the councillor and myself. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not a policy of council. This is the councillor's opinion and his opinion alone. Now, it may line up with what's going on at council, but he needs a majority of people around the council table to vote in favor or against any motion, policy, or bylaw to direct the CAO, to direct the administration to implement it. So again, this is his opinion and his opinion alone. Whew. With that
Thank you
being
for doing that, because
said,
I would have to do that for every answer. So that's good.
no worries. I do a carte blanche because I usually get at least one or two emails from every single episode about these questions. Now, with that being said, counselor, in the middle of August 2025, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing the District of Mackenzie today?
There's two that I'll bring up, and one of them we've already talked about, so I can be really short with it. But I do think that communication challenge is really big, and it's something that it might not seem like it impacts us, but it does. So it means we're not getting like the best feedback from the constituents to make sure we're doing the best work, and also vice versa, that the constituents don't know all the latest and greatest information that we're doing to help their lives, right? So like, I'll keep that one short because I've already discussed it a lot, but that's one of them. Um, the second biggest issue we have in the District of Mackenzie specifically is a declining industrial tax base. So if you know, for your listeners or watchers of this, like, the District of Mackenzie is a community that was built as an instant town in the 1960s by the province of BC to directly serve the forest industry. And we were built in partnership with forest companies. So actually, the design and layout of the town, forest companies had a say in. Um, and as anybody who's watching the news, even recently, will know that the forest industry is in a crisis, right? And we've had our mills shut down. And it kind of happened at the same time as COVID. So we had a huge shock, 2020, 2021. And the forest industry is still not on a rebound. Like, we're worried that the worst is yet to, or not yet. I think I hope things don't get much worse than this, but we're not expecting a solution to come very, very soon. So we're kind of stuck. So with that,
Because you're talking, just to make sure I'm
yeah, go
understanding what
for
you
it.
mean, the worst is yet to come. You're talking about the lumber tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed on Canadian hardwood
Yeah.
or softwood lumber, which builds houses down in the States, which a lot of companies buy from British Columbia and then ship and then build houses for. So the lumber industry has taken a massive hit in the last 6 months, let alone last few years.
On top of an industry that was already struggling. So it's just like the
Yeah.
hits keep on coming, right? Um, so I think what I probably meant to say a little bit more clear is we don't see like a light in the distance of like progress, right? Like we're kind of, I'm worried we're going to be at this state we are for a while, of struggles, which is why economic development is so important. But we'll get to that after when I talk about why this is such a big issue. Because our mills are closing down, it means that they get taxed at different rates, and we can get into like a minute discussion of how the province of BC does property taxes. But when a mill shuts down and they take their equipment, they end up not being an industrial property anymore and get taxed at a much lower class rate, which means we as a district of Mackenzie end up getting much less property tax back to fund the services that we offer the constituents. So last year in 2020, the 2024 budget, we were short 1,500,000, like a real big number like that. Just because of the properties getting downgraded. No big difference. Just the province of BC and the organization does assessments, BC Assessment, to assess these properties at a much lower rate, which means that we have to do the same things we've always been doing, short $1,500,000. So which led us to have a cut in services and B, a giant property tax increase. Because of the decline in industrial tax, it means that we just don't have as much money to do the things that we used to do. So we had to close our rec center 1 day a week for the summer, and we had to permanently shorten hours. We had to change our staffing for snow clearance, and we had to lower professional development budgets for our staff. And there's a whole list of things I can go through, but there was practical decisions that impacted our citizens that we had to do because the industry went down. And we'll have to do the same thing this budget cycle because we dipped into reserves. Now we're gonna have to make up for those reserves to do that, right? So yeah, like, and that's core to us doing. We've talked about like the things that municipalities have to do outside of our like legislative given responsibilities. We talked about education and healthcare and communication, but this is impacting the things that are our bread and butter, paving roads, sewers, water, garbage pickup. And if we can't do that, what are we like the municipality? Like there was a municipality in Ontario I was reading that actually de-incorporated. You probably know the story better than I do, right? But I'm not saying we're anywhere close to that, but if our industrial tax base keeps declining, we're going to run out of money to do the things that we have to do, let alone this extra stuff.
Do your residents understand that though?
I think they do now. They like I really
Because the thing is, and I'm just going to interject here for a second, but because you're right. So legally, for anyone who's watching this, because there was just a recent report that said the municipalities are spending like drunken sailors, legally, municipalities have to balance their budget. Municipalities cannot run deficits. They can borrow, they can use reserves, which is understandable, but they cannot run an actual deficit like the province or the federal government. So that means at the end of the year, the money that comes in is the exact money that's going out, vice versa. There's no wiggle room there. When you start cutting services, people are going to notice. Again, going back to Scott Pierce, he said this, and I remember this from our very first interview. He said, the federal government shuts down, you notice within a few months. The provincial government shuts down, you notice within a few days. The municipality shuts down, you notice that day. The water doesn't get turned on, the garbage doesn't get picked up, you notice it right away. So when you start cutting services, people are going to be upset. And then when you have to continuously cut service, I'm assuming people aren't going to be more happy that you're cutting them. They're going to be a lot more upset about that. So are people at that point where they're like, okay, we need to make some tough decisions now because we're stuck between a rock and a wooded place?
I think, and I'll go back to what I said. Like I assume intelligence in the electorate, and I
Yeah.
really like. I'm not saying that there wasn't hard conversations. There was. I remember going to a public town hall last. It was in the winter, so February or March, where we had uh people who were going to be directly impacted saying that I have to leave the community crying to me because of the cuts. So like I remember leaving that meet just exhausted as he had all these emotional conversations of how these cuts actually impact people, right? So I'm not saying people aren't upset. The people are upset, but I think I'm going to give the staff of the municipality huge credit. I think our communication of that project went or that problem was really what went really well. And I think we as a council um we made really hard decisions, but we did it. And even though we didn't always agree on how to do it, we got through that crisis through conversation, consultation, and just taking the problem head on. So I do think that, and I do think the electorate does realize like the downturn in the forest industry has been a decade-long thing, right? So it's not like it's a new surprise for them that forestry is in trouble. So and Mackenzie's it's probably one of the smartest communities in all of Canada in terms of forest policy. Like I would put our residents to anybody in the country because they understand the forest industry really well.
So getting back to the original about the challenges, and you mentioned a little bit that you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel quite yet, but you've got to be optimistic in this position that you are in as a counselor. Council has to be optimistic that the decisions you're making are going to pay off in the long run. Yes, they look bleak right now, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds a bit like a very bleak situation that you're in right now. And you're not the only municipality. Do you have hope that the district can overcome what we are in right now? Or are you in this perpetual state of, oh no, another budget cycle is coming up?
Oh, I have lots of hope, and I have lots of hope, and the hope comes from the town itself. Like Mackenzie has so many things going for it, that makes this. It does make it an easy sell when the economic tides start turning our direction. Um, Mackenzie's a beautiful place to live. It's affordable. Like you hear a housing crisis across the country. Mackenzie doesn't. We have affordable housing where people can buy a house still, and not just a small house, a nice house that a family can live in. We have people who are moving to Mackenzie from the Lower Mainland who are selling their house in Vancouver, able to buy a house with cash in Mackenzie without a plan and have money left over so they can figure it out later. We have fiber optic internet coming, so people can do that and work from home up here too. We have had we have our nonprofits are amazing in Mackenzie, and I feel always bad highlighting certain projects because they're all doing amazing things. But our outdoor recreation nonprofit called Murata has built on our Morphe Mountain, which is right beside the town. Like you can see it from town; it's a 5 minute drive. The province's longest ridgeline mountain bike trail, and it draws people from across northern BC, and it's starting to draw people from across Canada to come view these trails. So the town itself has so much to offer, and people who come to Mackenzie have nothing but great things to say. I just got married here last year, so me and my wife had 50 some odd family members, majority from Ontario, come to Mackenzie, and they were blown away by where we're living. We were able to have a house like this that there's no way we could afford in Ontario, with a town as beautiful as we have, with residents that are amazing. Um, so yeah, like Mackenzie is I am not super optimistic. And it just, I think this, I don't know if this is going to be your next question. I'm leading you to it, but I think the way that all these positives get harnessed is economic development. And I really do. And it's diversifying. So we're not so tied to forestry because right now we're at the whims of forestry and forestry is at that perpetual down, like, I probably should have been more clear when I say I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel for forestry. That's the
Yeah.
specific one for that industry.
But
But
but at the same time, because you've sort of said it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but forestry is so intertwined with the district of Mackenzie.
oh yeah,
Jobs are tied to it. So if the forest industry goes down, that means the district of Mackenzie goes down. So it goes into the line of questions that we're going to talk about is economic development, because you're not the only forestry industry community in northern British Columbia. There are others. How do you diversify your economy when everyone else is after the exact same pot of economic development dollars right now?
that's the question. That's the if I had to answer that question, that was an easy one. I think
You're a
Mackenzie
counselor. You should
flourishing
know
right
this
now.
off the bat. Come on, counselor.
Um, like in order for Mackenzie to thrive, well, I'll use an example that I think sets us apart. So one thing that we're already doing is trying to really control what we can control. So we have the downfall in the forest sector right now, but there's still harvestable wood and harvestable timber out there. And this was pre me being on council, so I can't take credit for it, but we've started a community forest. And a community forest that we've done in direct partnership with the McLeod Lake Indian Band, whose traditional territories we sit on. And the revenue from that community forest offset 1/3 of that property tax cut loss that I mentioned earlier in this episode. We got $400,000 from them last year. So that now, like the District of Mackenzie is in the forest industry now. So that's an example of a smaller thing that's not relying on multinational, large foreign corporations to do the projects, right? And I think it's getting creative, right? It's doing things that maybe we haven't done before. So something I was super passionate about probably a year ago, if not 2 years ago now, is I think we really needed to put some more money into economic development. So now we're in the process of hiring a second economic development officer to do this work, right? To to um, make sure that we're doing everything we can do and then some to attract different types of industries here and making Mackenzie a super livable community. We mentioned the fiber optic internet, but our rec center is putting on world-class events now too. 2 weekends ago, we had Rock on the Ridgeline here. Last year we had Yukon Blonde come, which is a Juno award-winning artist, came and performed, right, in small little Mackenzie. Right in our new pump track and community bike park, which is amazing to see the kids there. And we have music in the park there every Thursday. So all of these are little things that might not seem huge, but it's what the District of Mackenzie can control to encourage people to come here. And it's these events and it's these staff's gonna have to do the work of the economic development that brings people to Mackenzie so they can see how many cool things we're doing. And getting boots on the ground in Mackenzie, I think, is part of it.
One of the other areas that we often forget to talk about when it comes to economic development is not just the attraction of businesses, but the retention of businesses as well. Now, you have a thriving business community, and I say thriving in the sense that take out the lumber industry, and then you have a good yeah, the forest industry, and you have a good business community. How do you retain the current crop of businesses that are there? Because if they all dry up as well because of the downturn in the forest industry, so you're playing musical chairs right now. Do you think you're doing it in a sustainable way that people feel like they have a place in the district of community if they start a business and want a 10-year viable business in their community?
Yeah, and I think the answer to that question is actually the answer I just gave you, right? And it's creating a community that people want to live in.
Yeah.
We have such amazing, and part of the answer to that question is the business community, and we have such amazing small businesses. Like I'll use a specific example is we have the Purple Bite coffee shop here in town, which I put it against any Starbucks anywhere in the world. It's the best coffee shop you could possibly have, ran by somebody who really cares about the community. Um, and it's those small things, right, where people want to live here, where they can go to that coffee shop and talk to Kara and see that she's doing amazing things for the community on top of running a small business. Or you got Kelly's Bakery down the road who it's a small shop, but like Kelly treats his staff really well and has great food and helps the community out and donates to event. I used to be on the board of our local swim club here, and he would donate donuts every year for the swim meet for people to eat. And um, so it's those type of things where businesses come and see why the community is so great, and that's why they want to stay, and then the people come and support those businesses too, right? And then by having those businesses here, when visitors come, they see how awesome it is, and they want to stay, and they want to maybe start their own business and maybe do something industrial or do something that's or not related to forestry but can employ people. Um,
So I want to be, I'm very cautious of time here. We're at the 40-minute mark, and I
oh,
just want
okay.
to, no, and I just because I'm cautious of your time because I know it's late. We're recording this on a Sunday night, and I'm assuming you want to get back to your wife and not spend your day talking to a municipal affairs podcast from
I'll probably be
Calgary.
listening to one of those podcasts after this is over, so it's all
So
good.
I usually talk about tourism right now, but you've mentioned a lot of tourism spots already. So I'm going to skip that part of this interview, and I'm going to ask you a question that I don't get to ask that often because of time constraints. Now, this is your first term in office. Now you're going to be running for re-election, as you've said you're running. You're looking to run for re-election in a year's time. What do you wish you would have known 3 years ago that would have made you a better counselor today if you would have known then that you could pass on to the next generation who is thinking about putting their name on the ballot next year?
Oh, there's so many things. There's lots of things. Um, I think the first thing that I wish and it's not even something that I probably didn't know, but something I couldn't actually experience until you experienced it, is not to take every vote so personally. I think in the first year, when a vote went against the way I wanted to do, I took it like, oh, I couldn't convince people that my way was the right way. And I would go home and kick myself for it. Um, and it's just not the case, right? People are going to disagree, and that's the way democracy is supposed to work. And I feel like I've gotten better at that as the years have gone on. So just not taking everything so personal in the council chambers and being okay with like it's not a debate club where you're going to convince everybody, right? And not thinking of it that way. Um, I'm trying to think of what else that like if you ask me an hour from now, I could come up with so many more things.
What was the biggest shock for you? Because you get elected in your very first try. You're a creature of politics, so you watch politics all the time. Is it what you expected?
You know, it is pretty close. That's I think part of the reason I'm struggling to do an answer is I don't think super much um, surprised me. I think I came in eyes wide open. Um,
Well, this is you're honest. Like you said, you're gonna probably think about like
yeah.
five different things in about an hour's time. You go, I wish I would have said that. So my very last question, and it's the $1 million question. So this is the one time when you take as long as you want or as little time as you want, but you get to sell the district of Mackenzie. Okay, first off, before I ask that question, I'm just gonna ask this. So on your website, it's called Mackenzie, but we keep on calling it District of Mackenzie. What is it? Is it actually the District of Mackenzie or is it just Mackenzie? Because I'm getting very confused here.
Well, District of Mackenzie is like the legal name, right? So it's just like City of Vancouver or Township of Peterborough or County of Peterborough.
Okay,
County is the legal name, and it's called
okay.
Peterborough.
No, just because again in British Columbia, God bless British Columbia, I've heard of districts, but then they have directors. But you're a counselor, and that like there's the regional district of Caribou, which they're
Yeah.
directors, and then you keep on saying district. I'm like, but you're a counselor. Like I guess this is my knowledge of British Columbia municipal politics coming out right now, and that's why I'm looking forward to being at UBCM so I can learn a little bit more about Union of British Columbia municipalities. So I'm not asking the stupid questions
Well,
anymore.
and no, it's not a stupid question because like there's times we're having a conversation in Mackenzie where it's the District of Mackenzie, the Regional District of Fraser Fort George, which is like the surrounding
Yep.
area, and then it's School District 57 is our school authorities. You have three different governance things that have district in their name. So because you could be talking about all three things, and the district could apply to all three.
Okay, but it is Mackenzie. Okay. So then my final question after that rant there, I apologize, listeners and viewers, is what makes Mackenzie such a unique place to live, to work, and to raise a family? And I know you've mentioned it a lot during the interview, but this is when you package the whole 43-minute interview into one neat little elevator pitch. But what is the pitch to make people want to say, I want to move there? Basically,
It's
why did you move there?
yeah. Oh, well, that is two separate questions. So I'm going to start with the reason why Mackenzie's great, and if you want to know why I moved here, we can get into that afterwards. Because I didn't know anything about Mackenzie before I moved here. It was for a job. Um, but what makes Mackenzie great is the people. It really is, and there's a reason why. I'm sure every community says that their people are the best people, but the reason Mackenzie's are. So if you look at a map, Mackenzie is 2 hours away from any other municipality. We are 20 minutes down or 20, yeah, 20 minutes down a dead end highway. So the only reason you come to Mackenzie is to come to Mackenzie. There's no through traffic. So we're super isolated. So we are resilient. We rely on each other and we know each other. And I can't go into the co-op, which is our one grocery store we have in Mackenzie, and run into three or four people you know, right? And I think because of that isolation and being so separate from anywhere else, it really creates a great community spirit. It really does. I mentioned earlier in our interview how much great work our nonprofits are doing, and that's I think an example of that, right? Where the people that live here want to see Mackenzie thrive and grow, and be as best as it can be. And I think I've mentioned it throughout this interview, but like you can't take away the natural beauty of Mackenzie. You have literally you can see Morphe Mountain from town. It's a 5 minute drive north with world-class mountain bike trails on it. 2 minutes from town, again, you can see it from town depending on where you are. We have Morphe Lake, which is a picturesque lake with no development on it. So it's like the whole town is a private lake with two beaches on it that they can go swim at, right? We have Williston Lake, which is the biggest lake in BC 10 minutes away from town, right? There was a Facebook post that our economic development department did that said like within like I'm gonna butcher the numbers, so somebody's gonna say I got this wrong, but like within a half-hour drive or something like 80 different lakes you can explore within Mackenzie, right? It's like we're blessed with natural beauty. So if you put together the natural environment and the people, you can't get like again, I moved to Mackenzie thinking it was going to be a 2 to 3 year stop, and I think I've found a forever home.
That was going to be my last question. Does it feel like home? But I guess it does sound like
Oh
it feels like
yeah.
home.
Yeah, I went home. Like I went to home proper. So I'm from Ontario originally. Um, for FCM, the last time I saw you for
Yeah.
FCM, I tagged on a week to that. Went to home. I use home. I shouldn't say home. My birth home. My hometown.
You went
And
to
I
go
got homesick
visit
from Mackenzie.
family.
There you go. I went to go visit family, and I got homesick. I was so ready to go back to Mackenzie by the end of that trip, which I don't think I. If you told me that in 2019 when I moved out here, that would be the case, I wouldn't have believed you. And it's yeah.
I'm the exact same way. Every time I go back to Clarington, God bless Clarington. I love Clarington. It's where I was raised, but I go back and it does not feel like home. And
Yeah.
as much as I complain, and my husband's detriment to me saying I don't like large cities, I couldn't imagine myself living anywhere else but Calgary right now. Right now. I say right now because I know I'm going to probably move on from here sometime. But right now, Calgary's home. Jesse, counselor, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sitting down and taking time out of your relaxful Sunday and doing this interview. I know this episode will not be airing on a Sunday, so people listening going, "What do you mean it's Sunday?" But who are listening? It's a Sunday right now. But Jesse, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Always happy to help, and I think it's like the fifth or sixth time, but like there's not enough attention to municipal issues, and especially municipal issues in small rural towns like Mackenzie. So the fact that you're drawing attention to it, I really appreciate it. So we'll see you in UBSM in a month or so.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or wherever you're listening to this or watching this episode. Your support means the world to us. So if you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. To learn more about today's guest and the community that he represents, be sure to head over to our website at Cross Border Interviews. That's Cross Border Interviews, all one word, .ca today. Till next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Cross Border Interviews shortly.